Welcome to Ciao Bella, hosted by me, Erica Firpo, a travel journalist based in Rome. Each episode of Ciao Bella, I sit down with Italy's creators, contemporary artists and artisans, designers, culinary experts, heritage brands, and innovative aesthetes, and more who are defining and redefining 21st century Italy. Pull up a chair and join in. Hey, today I'm with Valeria Piccinini, who is on the outskirts of Modena, and I'm very excited to talk with you. Usually I see Valeria in person when I go up to Modena, but today we're digital. That's okay. How are you, Valeria?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good. Well, I'm really excited to introduce you to Ciao Bella because I was so happy when I met you and when I met Pedroni. Just to let everybody else know, Valeria works for Pedroni, which is a historic balsamic vinegar, or like. I'm actually, you know what? I'm going to let you introduce it because you can say it so much better than me.
Okay, so happy to talk to you again. It would be better in person, of course, but this is what the time asks for us. So I work for Pedroni. Pedroni is a family, mainly. It has a very, very long history. So today, the Pedroni family has a few different activities going on. It has an osteria, so a tavern, basically, where we serve traditional Modena food. And then we also have a farm. So we produce lambrusco, we produce balsamic vinegar, and we also produce liquors, like fruit liquors and grappa. So we make almost everything you can make out of grapes. And then we use these products in our osteria too. So the thing that I really love about my job actually is that I work for a part of history of my town too, because I was born in the same town where the Pedroni family lives.
What's the town called?
The town is called Nonantola, which is a very weird and complex name, but that's it. And Nonantola has medieval origins, so it was founded in medieval times, and has a really important abbey, which is in the same style as the Duomo di Modena, to make a connection. And actually, the Pedroni family is linked to that history too. So when the first member of the Pedroni family came to Nonantola, it was 1859, and his name was Giuseppe Pedroni. So Giuseppe Pedroni came to Nonantola, he bought some land and 3 houses, and one of these houses was actually a cella. So it was part of the Abbey of Nonantola, and that building is still standing, and that's where the osteria is. So actually, when you come inside our osteria, you come inside a building that is from the 12th, 14th century, which is crazy to me. And the Pedroni family has always been, active and open since 1859, actually 1862, because that's when, we have the actual papers and documents about the activity. So yeah, the family has been living there since then.
And a little hint, a little background for everybody else. This is in Emilia Romagna. Emilia Romagna. I'm so excited that I'm tripping over my tongue, which is on the kind of like the eastern side of it. It's on the eastern part of Italy. It's a region a little bit northeast in Italy, not the very north.
Yeah, not the northest part, what we still consider northeast.
And it's the center for all. I mean, I have to say this. It's the center for all the best food, uncontested.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Now, something that's really important is that we're going to talk a little bit about the different things that Pedroni does, but in particular, I want to talk about balsamic vinegar.
Yeah.
So the Pedroni family, now they're in their 6th generation. You mentioned they founded the Azienda in 1862. One of the things that I thought was so incredible was when I visited the Azienda, aside from the smell, aside from seeing these gorgeous barrels, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a second, but was that, this isn't like, hey, I just decided to wake up and make balsamic vinegar. This is something that's passed down. It's something that's family. You can make it in your home, but it obviously in a certain situation. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I think first of all, balsamic for us, so for the people who live in Modena, it's not a commercial product. Like if you talk to someone about traditional balsamic vinegar, so there's a little difference there, but mainly balsamic vinegar for the people in Modena, it's a tradition and it's a passion. So it's something you make in your own home and you make it for yourself and you make for it to be living through your generation. So you make it for your children and your grandchildren. And that's why I think it has survived for so long. Okay? We don't know exactly how we started making balsamic because I just told you it's a family tradition, so it's an oral tradition. So we don't have any documents that say, okay, on that day, that person decided to make balsamic. We will never know. So it's a very ancient tradition, and I think it's one of the most precious things that there are in the world for a person of Modena. If you want to make a great present to someone in Modena, you give them a bottle of your own balsamic. So it's like the best gift you can give to someone. And this was always a passion for the Pedroni family too. So actually, when the osteria started, the family wasn't selling balsamic because at the time it wasn't a product to sell. You know, while you had Giusti, who was serving the royal family too, but usually in the osteria you could eat something and drink something, and you could buy maybe wine and bread. And in the following year, you had the drugstore too, you had the bakery, but balsamic wasn't a thing, let's say, until the 80s. So balsamic was the passion of Giuseppe Pedroni the first. So what he did was to recycle the barrels that he had in the osteria. So he had a lot of barrels of, for example, wine or beer or marsala or zibibbo. And once they were empty, he used them for making his own balsamic. And that tradition kept on and until today, where balsamic is our main focus, let's say, it's our main product.
So let's talk a little bit about, because one of the things that you said was it's something that's in the family, it's passed down. And when I visited, you showed me a balsamic, I think that was started the year that Giuseppe, the current Giuseppe, was born.
Exactly. So the tradition of balsamic usually is that a family builds a new batteria, so a new set of barrels where balsamic vinegar is made when a child is born in the family. Okay, so usually everyone in the family has his own batteria of balsamic. So we have on show the batteria that was built for Giuseppe III, so the actual Giuseppe. And the tradition says that usually you shouldn't take any balsamic out of your batteria until you get married. So until the day of the wedding. So on that day, you can take the first, let's say, batch out of your batteria and use it. And what Giuseppe did was to make, the little gifts for the guests at the wedding with little bottles of his own balsamic, which I would have never done, by the way. But he was very generous, so all his guests got actually a 33 years old balsamic vinegar, which is good.
Wow. Now, just to give everybody an idea of what you mean by the batteria, when like one of the things I love Harry Potter, and I will make and I'm going to make a Harry Potter reference because it just reminded me, what is it called? The Hall? Is it the Hall? Oh God, I have to look it up. This is what's kind of fun about actually interviewing you on the phone is while you're talking, I can look up things.
Oh yeah, that's true.
to make
that's
sure
very helpful. You mean the place where you have all the memories?
Yes. No. What's that called?
Okay. It was in the Ministry of Magic. I don't remember the name itself, but you had, thousands of little glass spheres where inside you had all the prophecies and the memories, right?
The Hall of the Prophecies. That's what it's called. Okay. So do you remember that scene? This
Absolutely,
is so, and I love it because it's like all the prophecies. So I want you guys to imagine you're in this beautiful wooden like farmhouse almost. This beautiful wood. It's just rows and rows and rows of barrels.
Yeah,
And in
exactly.
each barrel is balsamic vinegar, which if you've ever had the chance to smell proper balsamic vinegar, it's like, to me, it's like it's nectar. It's sweet.
Yeah.
It's so delicious. I'd love to for you to tell everybody how, like, what is balsamic vinegar and what's the difference between regular vinegar?
So balsamic vinegar, let's start from what I think everybody think it is. So usually balsamic, when you think of it, is just a type of vinegar that you have in the stores that usually is darker than the, I don't know, apple cider vinegar or wine vinegar, and usually it's a little bit sweeter. But what you find in the stores, it's a pure commercial product. And most of the times it's a very industrial product. And it's a product that we use too, but we use it for, everyday things. So something that we use very freely, very easily. And usually it's made of cooked grape must. So basically you reduce the juice of the grapes and you add some wine vinegar to it. And then you can age it inside one barrel, usually, a wooden barrel, for as much time as you want. So it depends on the producer. The minimum time by law is 60 days, okay? And in this case, 60 days, so a couple of months, which is quite rather short amount of time. And for the balsamic you find in the stores, which is called Balsamic Vinegar of Modena, and usually has the IGP or PGI certification. In that case, it's always a blend, and the grapes must be coming from certain varieties of grapes, but they can be grown almost anywhere in Italy. So sometimes the balsamic that you find on the store is actually from Modena, like the one we make because we are a small producer, and sometimes it's not. Maybe it's made with grapes coming from the south of Italy, maybe with wine vinegar coming from somewhere else. So it can be a very industrial product too. That doesn't mean it must be always bad. Like you can find good quality in there too, but it's not the traditional balsamic. So it's not the one the families make at home. So traditional balsamic is called Aceto Balsamico Tradizionale di Modena. So it has the traditional word in it, in the label, and it's a DOP certification. So it's the strictest certification you can get in Europe. And it's like the OCG for wines, for example.
And doesn't the bottle have a certain shape? Good. So, by the way, PDO or DOP means protected designation of origin. I think most of you guys know that. But yeah, I remember you talking to me and showing me the shape of the bottle.
Yeah, so the bottle is very important because it's linked to certification. So a PDO product for balsamic, traditional balsamic, only comes in one bottle, and you can look it up online. If you search for traditional balsamic vinegar, you will always have this bottle, which is a bottle that has a round body and like rectangular base, and it looks almost like a drop when you look to it from the front. And it's been designed by Giorgetto Giugiaro, which is a very famous designer. It's a Lamborghini designer too.
What was his name?
Giorgetto Giugiaro. And that's the only bottle for traditional balsamic. So all the producers have this very bottle. So by the bottle, you are sure that you are buying a high quality balsamic vinegar.
Now, I did my simplified research, let's just say. And I know that the balsamic is made with the must of grapes, and I think the minimum for the traditional balsamic it's 12 years.
Yes, exactly. So
is it a specific type of grape?
So you can use a different variety of grapes as long as they are from Modena. So they are certified from Modena. So you can use lambrusco, you can use Trebbiano, you can use Ancelotta, you can use a lot of different grapes, but they must be from Modena. And then since it's a DOP, of course, the whole production must happen in Modena. And for us, we only use Trebbiano grapes. So we only use white grapes, and especially we use Trebbiano di Spagna or Trebbianina. which is a variety of Trebbiano that was imported from Spain in the 1700s. And it's a variety that not many people use because it's not very productive. So, for instance, with lambrusco, you have way more grapes, so you have more must, you have more raw materials. But we believe that it's the best quality, so we stick to that, even if it's a little bit more expensive to use Trebbiano. So for the balsamic, for the traditional balsamic, you only have one ingredient, and it's only the cooked grape must, and that's it.
So essentially the process is that the cooked grape must, each year you take it out of the barrel and pass it to the next barrel, the batteria, correct?
Yeah, so
the Hall of Prophecies.
yeah, and then you go in the Hall of Prophecies. So
And
yeah,
does
basically, no, please.
No, I was just gonna ask you, does it change? I mean, are you using different kinds of wood barrels like
Yeah.
oak and cherry?
Mhm. So balsamic vinegar, first of all, it's a very natural process. So it changes a lot, and you have a lot of things that can, interfere with the taste. One of these things is the wood. So you can only use 5 different woods for traditional balsamic, and that's cherry, chestnut, oak, mulberry, and juniper wood. And each wood is going to give a different flavor to your balsamic. So in the Hall of Prophecies that you saw, the very big room, that's the younger, let's say, Acetaia. So that's where we have the new barrels, let's say new because they already are like 15 years old, but they're new. And in that case, they are mainly of chestnut and oak. And that's because now you have all the other woods, so mulberry, juniper, and cherry, they are protected woods in Italy. So you cannot make new barrels out of those woods anymore. Like you should import the wood, which is always tricky. But yeah, wood does a lot of the job. And for balsamic, the older wood is always the one that gives the best flavor. So opposite to wine, where maybe you change the barrels every few years, for the balsamics is the exact opposite. So you try to keep the same barrel as long as possible, as long as it can, hold balsamic. And we have some really old barrels too in the family, and those are the most precious ones.
Like how old?
1862. So we have some of the barrels that are the original barrels of Giuseppe I. So they are dated, 1860, 1862.
How old is your oldest balsamico?
So our oldest balsamico, we are sure that is at least 70 years old, because we have papers that prove that those barrels were inside, the house. And these are a few barrels. Most of them are of Zibibbo wine. So it used to be Zibibbo barrels. And those are the barrels that the Giuseppe Pedroni used first. And but since you didn't have any registrations, any DOP at the time, we're not 100% sure of how old the content is inside. But we know the barrels are from the 1860s. So
wow.
that balsamic, it's something incredible, and it doesn't even taste like vinegar anymore. It's just out of this world. And it's a very, very limited production.
I'm going to tell you a story that you're going to laugh at. A long time ago, when I was 18 years old, my friend and I, we were in college. We had just started our first year at university, and in Philadelphia. And my friend and I we're both Italian American, and we grew up with having balsamico, but like whatever you could get, I guess, at the supermarket. And we had Italian parents. And I remember that there was this guy, we met him, and he was like, he didn't go to university with us. I think he was older than us, and I think his father owned a restaurant. So he took us out one night, and he was like, ladies, he wanted to really impress us. So he's like, I'm going to impress you. So he brings out this vial, and he goes, this vial cost me $100, which at the time was a lot of money, like a lot and it was a really tiny vial. And he was like, this is traditional balsamico. And we were like, it cost you $100. Oh, you got ripped off. And he was like, no, he's like, it's so precious. My dad brought it back with me, brought it back from Italy. Now, mind you, my family's from Rome. My friend's family is from Pescara. So I guess neither of our families didn't know anything about Modena. But this guy was telling us, I remember his name was Johnny, and he was like, it tastes like chocolate. And we're like, oh, well, then that definitely isn't balsamico. And then he poured it out on a spoon, and it was really thick. And we were like, oh, this isn't balsamico. Now, I'm here to tell you that was the dumbest evening of my life because if I wasn't impressed at all. My friend Sabrina wasn't impressed. Now in the past, now looking back, I'm like, oh my God, that guy gave us a vial.
Like, that was legit balsamic, I know.
It was legit, and we couldn't care less. Now, to let everybody know, it's really, really thick. It's like this thick, juicy nectar. And when
it's like molasses, like the honey sometimes. So it's like really thick.
And I've heard rumors that it's also like it can prevent the plague. It can cure all sorts of maladies. I've heard all sorts of things.
I'm not sure about the plague, but but actually the word balsamico, it comes from balsamo in Italian, that means balm, so something healing. So it actually does have some healing properties, and that's true, like it's proven, because it's acid. It's very acid, so it can kill a lot of bacteria. So, for example, when I have a sore throat, I have a spoon of balsamic, and that truly helps. Okay. And then since it's a fermented product, it's good for your digestion, as it's, kefir or yogurt or any other fermented product. And it's very good. So I think it could go into the maybe antidepressants or, some
so my daughter this morning had like a slight fever and a stomach ache. Should I just give her a little bit of balsamico?
You can try. I mean, we had some guests, like I remember once we had Chinese guest, and she was feeling sick, and like she didn't know anything about balsamic, and she was like looking at me with this dark, thick, like black liquid, and looking at me like, I'm not gonna drink that. Like I don't want that. And I was like convincing her, you're going to feel better, and then she felt better, so she was like in shock. So I would never thought that thing that's so scary, because it's very thick and very dark, could actually be helpful. So it does have some healing properties for sure.
Now, is it true that every nonno and nonna in Modena and around in the area, they have at least one barrel of balsamico in their attic?
Yeah, almost. I think you can divide like the people of Modena into groups. So the ones that have balsamic in their homes, and usually is the grandparents, and the ones that don't have balsamic in their house, but they get it from the other half, so from the other group, because balsamic is mainly a gift. So I'm part of the second group, so the people that don't have their own balsamic, unfortunately. But like my great aunt does, and she gives me a bottle every Christmas. So.
Oh, wow.
If you're from Modena, you always have balsamic in your house. Either it's a barrel or it's a bottle from your friend or relatives, but you always have some, homemade traditional balsamic in your house.
Now, I want to flip the conversation a little bit, because the other day in the news, I was, in my house in Rome, and I flip on the news, and it said that lambrusco was coming out of the pipes all over Emilia-Romagna.
Yeah, unfortunately not all over Emilia-Romagna, because it wasn't in my pipes, unfortunately. But yeah, it happened in Sette Cani, which is like in the hills. Sette Cani, it's called the town. And it's and what happened, I think they had a malfunction in a cantina, so in a winery, and the lambrusco went into the water pipes. So in the morning, the people of that town, they woke up, they opened their faucets, and there was lambrusco coming out in their sink. And it was like for an hour or so. That was crazy. Like I wanted to move immediately.
Me too. I was like, I'm moving, because I have fallen in love with lambrusco, and I'm so happy I have, because I feel like that lambrusco, I think most people, when I'm like, oh yeah, Darius and I are we're gonna open up a bottle of lambrusco, and some of my friends, not here but outside of Italy, are like, oh, too bad. And I'm like, oh.
No.
So let's talk a little bit about lambrusco, because I know Pedroni also produces a lambrusco.
Yeah. So we make two types of lambrusco because you have different varieties of grapes, so you can get different wines. And one is lambrusco di Sorbara, which is, I think, the most famous too, like the one that's well known. And the other is lambrusco of Modena, which is made with Salamino grapes, so another type of grape of lambrusco. And yeah, it's true. I think lambrusco is a little bit underrated and not very well known, especially abroad, because I think when it started to go in the world, so they started mass producing lambrusco, and it was, I think, the 70s, the 80s. The producers, they focused more on the quantity so they could export, and distribute the product, and not on the quality itself. So I think the first time, people actually knew about lambrusco, it wasn't such a good lambrusco, or maybe it was something made for certain palates. Like, I know a lot of people, a lot of tourists that come and they say, oh, I love lambrusco, it's so nice and sweet. I'm like, lambrusco is not sweet. No. No, like it can.
Why don't you describe what lambrusco is? Because I think people just know it as frizzy wine. So let's describe it a little.
So first of all, it's a red sparkling wine, which is not very common. So usually when you think about sparkling wines, you think about white wines. And this case is red. And the Sorbara in particular has a very unique color, which is ruby red, and it's very light. And sometimes when you just bottle it, it's almost pink, and it's beautiful. Like, to me, it's like one of the best colors for wine. And lambrusco comes from Latin, from Italian, la brusca. So the Romans called this type of grape la brusca, and brusca means sour, so acid. So it was an acid type of grape. So the wine you get out of it, it's a very fresh, dry wine, so very acid wine. And that's its main characteristic. And then, of course, you have a lot of fruits, a little bit of a violet flavor to it, but it's mainly a very dry wine, and it's quite a simple wine. That's true. Like, it's not an aging wine. It's not something too complex. It's made with the Charmat method, so it's not made with the champagne method with all the bottles. It's just tanks where you get the wine fermented in it. But it doesn't mean, since it's a simple wine and it's a light wine too, so you never have high alcohol in it. Usually it's like 11 degrees, 10 degrees. It doesn't mean it's a low quality product. It just means it's a wine that you can use every day. You can use it for your aperitivo and not get drunk on it. Like, you can drink it easily. And for us, it's like our everyday wine. It's the wine that you always have grandmas, or you always have at lunch when you're friends, when you make parties, you always have lambrusco.
I have decided that it's our aperitivo drink. So that's why, when I went to Pedroni, and I think we tried a bunch of different lambruschi.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with lambrusco di Sorbara, which Sorbara means the grapes are from Modena. So it's entirely.
Yeah.
Entirely.
Sorbara, it's an area, okay? And it's the central area of Modena. So the Sorbara grapes are known to be the oldest variety. So it's supposed to be the first variety of lambrusco from which all the others derive. So it's the oldest lambrusco, and Sorbara refers to the central area of Modena.
I think it's like, my husband and I love, first of all, we love the bottle. The bottle is really particularly beautiful, in my opinion, or your bottle is really lovely.
Well, other people can have the bottle too. Yeah, but it's cute. It's not the regular, wine bottle. It's a little bit more round and thick.
A little more, and the tappo is a little bit different, correct?
Yeah, it's up to, like, you have the cork, like regular cork, and yeah, but it's more, we try to make something that reminds you, you know, of a little bit of a country, let's say, surroundings, so something very warm and familiar, nothing too sophisticated, okay? Because Lambrusco is not a sophisticated wine. It's a good, very honest, very genuine wine that you can drink.
Yeah, it's the perfect wine, in my opinion, for like a hot summer afternoon.
Yeah.
Having some friends over, it's perfect.
And you must drink it cold. That's very important, because if you
that is key.
Drink it warm, yeah, it's not going to be a good wine. So always chill it before drinking.
So I thought, now, since you have the perfect combination, you have Balsamico and you have Lambrusco, and the question I think a lot of people have when it comes to Balsamico, it's so expensive. It's in such a tiny, like, traditional Balsamico. It's in a tiny bottle. Do you only spoon out a little bit? And you and Pedroni are perfect to talk about food and Balsamico food and Lambrusco, because what you're doing in your osteria is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And different.
So regarding the price of balsamic, just to give a little bit of knowledge, it's so expensive because it's worth it. So it's so expensive because you have a minimum aging of 12 years in at least 5 different barrels. So that's why we have the hall with a lot of barrels, because you need 5 barrels at least to start a production. And it's 12 years, and the ratio usually is 1,000 kilos of grape are going to make, 100 kilos of grape are going to make 1 liter of balsamic. And you must also wait 12 years of your life. So that's why at least that's the minimum, okay? Because maybe it's not enough, because maybe you just messed it up for 12 years and your balsamic isn't good enough and it doesn't pass the certification. So you won't bottle and sell your balsamic. So that's why it's so expensive, but it's a very, very intense flavor. It's a very strong taste, so you don't have to use a lot of it. And like the true traditional balsamic must be used in drops, really, like just a few drops. And that's what we do in our restaurant too. You always use it raw, so you always add it at the end of cooking. Like, don't caramelize some onions with traditional balsamic, because every time you do that, somebody in Modena dies. And and you just add a few drops after cooking. So as a finishing touch, you add your balsamic, and that really gives a true kick to your dish.
So the osteria at Pedroni is called Osteria di Rubiara, and it's run by Giuseppe's mom, correct?
Franca. Yeah, so the osteria has always been run by the family. So the kitchen in particular is run by Franca, and Franca now, she's like close to her 80s, so she's not cooking herself anymore. We have a chef, and he's Lorenzo, and he's actually very young. He's 24 this year, but he's very, very good. But Franca still, she's all day inside the kitchen watching him, making sure he does everything by the book, and she's still the one that holds the main recipes. So
let's talk about some of the recipes. One of the recipes I wanted to bring up was, I think it was the pollo al lambrusco.
Yeah. Pollo al lambrusco. It's a particular recipe, and that the family created, I think, around the 70s, 80s. And it's chicken cooked in lambrusco wine. So the main ingredient is not the chicken, but it's the lambrusco. And the lambrusco is made only by us, and it's a particular lambrusco that Giuseppe makes only for this recipe. So we have a particular batch of lambrusco just for the kitchen. We don't sell it, we don't drink it, it's just for the recipe, okay? So I could tell you exactly how it's made, but if you don't have that lambrusco, you're never gonna get the same results. So it's basically, chicken, you put in the flour a little bit, and then you cook it with a ton of lambrusco, and you let it simmer until it becomes a sort of cream. And I think it's a nice dish also because if you look it from the outside, it's ugly. Like it's very dark and has this kind of jelly around it, so it's very scary too. But once you start cutting the meat, inside you have chicken meat, which is very white, like it's very light in color. And that makes a very nice contrast.
What about a recipe with balsamico?
So balsamico, well, if we start from the beginning, so with the pasta, we add balsamic to our tortelloni. So tortelloni are the big ones that you don't cook in broth, just to make a point. And the tortelloni we make, they are filled with ricotta di montagna, so that we take it from the mountains. So the very thick, fat ricotta, and a little bit of spinach in the filling. And then you just cook it and drizzle a little bit of balsamic of the young one, so the 12 years old, on top. And I think that's my favorite dish. Yeah, that's my favorite dish, hands down. And you want to use a balsamic that's not too aged because you have the ricotta, which is quite fat, and you need a young balsamic to match it. So usually younger balsamics like affinato, so 12 years, have still lots of acidity. They have like kind of a sour kick to them, and that helps balancing, you know, the ricotta and the butter that you use to stir the tortelloni in a little bit. So that's it. And the next one is the frittata.
I loved the frittata.
Yeah.
I loved the tortelloni, but I don't know, the frittata took me to a higher level.
Yeah, the frittata is kind of a mesmerizing dish, I think, because it's called frittata. It's not an omelette. It's not oven baked. It's literally fried. Okay, so it's fried in oil and with a little bit of onion too, but it's just a hint, and a little bit of aglione, which is the, let's say, basic seasoning in Emilia Romagna. So it's a seasoning made with garlic, salt, and rosemary, and you like chop them very, very finely together, and you just make jars of it, and we use it everywhere. Okay, that's our basic seasoning, not ours, like Emilia Romagna basic seasoning. And so you make this omelette, you actually fry the eggs. So when you are making it, you have a lot of bubbles and it really grows a lot. It gets very big. And then you have to dry it out a little bit because otherwise you will have a lot of oil in it. But the thing is that we serve it very hot. And when we pour balsamic like just in front of you, you will have all the smell of the balsamic, all the perfume of the balsamic coming out, and it's irresistible. Like you cannot not eat it. Okay, and we still use the younger one for the frittata. Actually, sometimes I think the one you had was the Umberto balsamic. So all of our balsamics have a name coming from the person of the family for which the batteria was started. So you had the Umberto, and Umberto, it's a balsamic that's aged in juniper. So it's one of our selections because we have really few juniper barrels. And juniper, it's a very woody wood. So it gives very woody notes. And with the egg, it's amazing. So that's a very good.
And now, one of the other things I've been trying to remember that I had was, I think it was the gelato.
Yeah.
Did I have a gelato all'aceto balsamico?
Sì. So we make the ice cream too. So that's a gelato. It's like custard cream gelato. So it's basically eggs. We don't add any lemon, any vanilla to it. It's just eggs. And that's very good because in this way you can taste the balsamic better. So you have a very neutral base. And we add the extra old balsamic on top of it. So extra vecchio means minimum 25 years of aging. So you have just two varieties of traditional balsamic, affinato minimum 12 years, extra vecchio minimum 25 years. the 25 years always has the golden cork. So if you see a bottle and it has the golden label on top, that means it's a minimum 25 years old. Okay. So we use that because that's when the vinegar gets over the 25 years old, it becomes really balanced and it seems sweeter and more intense. So that's better for desserts in general. So that's why we use it on the ice cream. And that's, I think, is my other first favorite dish that we had with the balsamic too.
I mean, I can, that lunch was incredible. And I think also I should tell everybody it was a hot day, and
it was so hot.
One of the requirements when I met Valeria, we were with a bunch of friends, was no telephones, just enjoy the lunch, no pictures. So we sat outside, and it was beautiful because you just sitting there eating, and there was no distractions. It was, and that's the thing I often tell people about visit when you come to Italy. If one of the things you want to do is really eat and have it, if you want to have a true food experience, I always suggest driving around Emilia Romagna, going to Modena. Because the food there, the cuisine is, I love Rome, grew up with Roman cuisine, but I will say that there's prosciutto, there's lambrusco, there's balsamico, there's the parmigiano. I mean, it's like everything that you identify as the best in the world, the tortellini, it's there. Now, I was wondering, if you don't mind, will you share with the listeners the information on how to find Pedroni? What's the website?
So the website is, of course, www.acetaiapedroni.it. So Acetaia is like aceto in Italian, so it's ACETAIA, Pedroni.it. And there you have a little bit of everything, a little bit of our history, some information about the osteria, and then all the balsamics that you can purchase. Unfortunately, we cannot ship the wines and the liquors outside of Italy because we don't have the license to it, because it's quite complicated.
But you can ship them to Rome, to me.
Of course, yeah. In Italy, it's not an issue. And we already shipped some lambrusco, which took a very long turn because it went to Germany first. But
that was just that was a labor issue. But,
by the way, I received your lambrusco back last week, a week ago, from Germany. You know that yours went to Germany, and then it came back to Italy. And then I literally received it last week. I'm like, okay, take your time.
Because when we figured out the mistake, it came to me in like a day.
Yeah, what's going on?
But I wanted to let everybody know, you can also go to Instagram. It's Pedroni 1862.
Yes,
and you can see everything.
And we have a little bit of pictures.
So even though you don't allow pictures, when I was there, you have taken and shared some great images. I see the families.
Yeah, because we thought at least, put them on some social media, to let people see what we make. But we think it's important that when you're here, you enjoy your experience. And actually, in the last few months, Italo is the Giuseppe's father, so the patriarch of his generation. He is kind of retiring a little bit because he's 83 years old, and I think he has the right to rest a little bit. So now we are slightly more loose on the telephone policies, but we still try to, suggest and ask people to not use their phone while they're on the table, which, by the way, I believe it's a little bit rude too, and also prevents you from, experiencing what you're here for, eating something, and you with your friends, not be on your phone. So
I mean, if you like to eat, there's absolutely no reason to have the phone next to you. I mean, it is such an incredible experience. So I'm going to let everybody know, if you go to my website, to the podcast page, so inciaobella.co, you can find the podcasts, and I'll have all the information about Pedroni. I'll link to the websites, and everybody can go and find Balsamico. They can see some great pictures that I have to ask. Valeria for? Because I just realized I have none. But it'll be by the time you hear this, I will have a bunch from Valeria.
I will
Valeria,
send it to you.
it was great. It was great. It was great talking to you. I'm gonna go give my daughter a little teaspoon of balsamico right now to make her feel better.
She'll feel better. Okay, thank you so much. It was so nice to talk to you. Thank you.
I'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Ciao Bella. If you'd like to know more about today's guest, please visit ciaobella.co and click on the podcast link, or go directly to ciaobella.co/podcast. Want more Italy? You can find all my episodes on iTunes and Spotify and Stitcher. When you have time, subscribe to iTunes and rate the podcast. What are you waiting for? And if you want to be part of the podcast, email me or DM me your Italy questions. To learn more about me and my work, go to my website, ericafirpo.com, and follow my Italy adventures on Instagram at ericafirpo. Ciao, Bella! And a very big thank you and hug to Massimiliano Yonta and Dis to Dis Studios, the producers of Ciao Bella, who continue to make me sound and feel great.